Hello, beautiful people. My name is Buthaina, and this is the DigDeeper podcast. Today's episode is quite special. It's our first episode ever. Yay! I'm very excited. So, are you guys ready to dig deeper today? Oh my god, I sound like Dora the Explorer. Unlike Dora, though, I'm very ready to answer that question. Yes, I am ready, and I hope you are too. I would like from you to think of an answer to the following question. Have you ever felt insecure about certain body part, certain action you have done or said, simply because someone joked about it in the presence of others to attract their attention or simply make them laugh? As a reaction to that, you got really mad, but somehow everyone seemed to be okay with it. They even told you that you are overreacting because it was an obvious joke. This kept you wondering what the hell was going on and why was everyone okay with it. Now, after years, maybe months or days, you're kind of okay with it yourself and probably do the same to others sometimes. And tell them it's a joke and that they should grow out of it and accept it just the same as you did. Did you have some scenarios in your head? I hope you did. If you didn't, however, I'm going to simplify it more by giving you a scenario that I took from a book, one of actually my favorite books of all time, and it's called Anne of Green Gables. I'm pretty sure you all know Anne one way or another, maybe from the numerous movies, cartoons, or series that talk about her adventures. In brief, Anne is an orphan girl with red hair and lots of freckles. She had a horrible life so far, and she was finally adopted by two old siblings, Marilla and Matthew, who lived in a very beautiful farm on an island. After a day there, she's living her best life, enjoying the weather there, the farm, everything. And now Marilla calls her to finally meet a friend of hers. She's a famous woman on town, and her name is Mrs. Rachel Lynde. Here is how things went between the two. Well, they didn't pick you for your looks, that's sure and certain, was Mrs. Rachel Lynde's empathetic comment the moment she laid an eye on Anne. Mrs. Rachel was one of those delightful and popular people who pride themselves on speaking their minds without fear or favor. She's terrible skinny and homely, Marilla. Come here, child, and let me have a look at you. Lawful hard. Did anyone ever see such freckles and hair as red as carrots? Come here, child, I say. Anne came there, but not exactly as Mrs. Rachel expected. With one bound, she crossed the kitchen floor and stood before Mrs. Rachel, her face scarlet with anger, her lips quivering, and her whole slender form trembling from head to toe. I hate you, she cried in a choked voice, stamping her foot on the floor. I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. A louder stamp with each assertion of hatred. How dare you call me skinny and ugly? How dare you say I'm freckled and red-headed? You are a rude, impolite, unfeeling woman. Anne, exclaimed Marilla. But Anne continued to face Mrs. Rachel undauntedly, head up, eyes blazing, hands clenched. How dare you say such things about me? She repeated. How would you like to have such things said about you? How would you like to be told that you are fat and clumsy and probably hadn't a spark of imagination in you? I don't care if I do hurt your feelings by saying so. I hope I hurt them. You have hurt mine worse than were ever hurt before, and I will never forgive you for it. Never, never! And she kept stamping her feet. Did anybody ever see such temper? Exclaimed the horrified Mrs. Rachel. Anne, go to your room and stay there until I come up, said Marilla, recovering her powers of speech with difficulty. To summarize things up, Mrs. Rachel Lynde is the famous honest aunt that everyone likes, despite how rude she is. Anne is a new little orphan girl in town with traumatic experiences who hates her red hair, freckles, and skinny body so much. The moment Rachel saw Anne, she decided to mention these exact things and expected of Anne to be a good child and say nothing in return. Anne, however, unexpectedly, got really vexed at Mrs. Rachel, something I really liked, and told her exactly how rude and uncaring she was. Of course, Anne's reaction was a little too overboard, with using the word hate. I mean, that was a little bit exaggerated of Anne, but Anne is not to be blamed, to be honest. She was just a child. She got a lot of emotions to figure out, and she has to deal with them one way or another, and I guess that was her way of dealing with them. Let alone, Anne has a lot of time ahead of her to learn how to control herself and have a civilized conversation, even when she is really mad. However, Mrs. Lynde's action as an adult remains wrong. And I believe you think the same, because she could have thought twice before saying such a thing to a poor little orphan. She simply could have been more considerate, let's say. People such as Mrs. Lynde come into our lives in different forms, and not only as the evil aunt, or the uncaring, or the unfeeling, as Anne says. They can come as a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, a close friend, and sometimes a classmate or someone we just got to know, actually. And I'm pretty sure now that you have someone in mind already, right? You probably have so many questions right now. Are people like Mrs. Lynde naturally horrible people? Or are they created by something or someone? In both cases, how to avoid them and how not to get affected by them. And why is this episode's title Breaking the Cycle? What does that have to do with any of this? And why is this subject so important to discuss? Alright. I actually have answers to all of those questions. Let's start. First answer is people like Mrs. Lynde are proven to be hurt too. This type of people usually do these actions either because they have dealt with it before and were told it was okay, so they're now doing the same to others. Or they are attention seekers. And these kind of people were not given attention as kids and probably were bullied too. Thus, they seek to humiliate others in order to feel better about themselves, or to make others laugh, which gives them a sense of fulfillment. What is the right way to deal with these people? And should we avoid them? For me, I think that avoid replying to them, yes, maybe. That's a good choice. But avoiding them altogether is never, ever a solution. The world is filled with horrible people, all sorts of people. So if we avoid all of them, then we might as well not meet any person anymore, right? So from my experience, I think now that you are aware of these things, next time this happens to you, you wouldn't really get frustrated or mad. You would actually feel like you can finally react properly to this. My advice to you is either just keep on staring at them. That is, if you're not comfortable with, let's say, saying anything back. The most amazing thing about our eyes is that they have language of their own. See how your mother, for example, would tell you as a child not to touch something just by looking at you? The same language. Here you're going to stare at the person with your eyes and tell them that what they said was too much, and that if they keep on going at it, you wouldn't shut up anymore. One thing I love about this reaction is that it bothers elderly people the most. And it gets them really frustrated because they usually expect you to either snap or be a good kid and at least not stare at them. However, not everyone get frustrated by this reaction. Some will actually go overboard and start giving more annoying comments about that. Just like Mrs. Lynde. After all of what Anne said and shared about how empathetic she was, the only thing that she replied was, "Oh my god, check that temper." So she only focused on replying or making more comments about Anne and making her look bad. The second option here is to directly tell them that the way they are acting is shitty and simply pathetic, and that you wouldn't deal with it anymore. without screaming like Anne did, though. You can even address the people around who were giving them their attention, because it's not only the person who's making comments' fault, it's actually the fault of the surrounding as well, because they're giving them their attention. The only way that you should react in this scenario is actually to keep your cools down and talk directly. This is what I hate, and I hope you stop it. Only after acting back that you are allowed to leave these people or this group. This is an action that I call self-love and care, because these people are clearly not your people and would keep on harming your self-confidence whenever possible. So it's better to leave. And unless they try to correct their mistakes, you are way better without them. If they are family members and you have to deal with them, I assure you that if they do this 2 or 3 times and you keep on stopping them, they will know at some point that you are not a person to play with. Now, what does this have to do with our episode's title? The title is Break the Cycle, right? Breaking the cycle is an English idiom that means to act in order to stop or to put an end to a repeating pattern of harmful or negative behavior. So, to break a cycle means to stop a harmful behavior from happening over and over again. In our society and the whole world, many people suffer from insecurities way deep into their adulthood that were created because of such jokes. Words have power, people. And every one of you must know that verbal violence can hurt more than the physical one at times. Thus, I wish for all of us to take this into account. Let us not raise insecurities, but instead raise awareness and self-acceptance. Let us talk more about the things that are changeable and learn from each other, not laugh about each other. Let us recognize the fact that our words towards a person can shape the way they see themselves throughout their entire life. What I want to highlight here is that if you see someone treating another in the way that we were talking about, stop them. If you feel like it's fun to act this way, stop yourself before it becomes a habit. Read the signs. Making such jokes with adult friends is not the same as using them with an insecure teenager or a child who is in a growing phase. And even with an adult, it needs to be consensual. Meaning, if you ever feel that they are not liking it, you should immediately apologize and stop. Lastly, work on healing and accepting yourself. You have a big nose? Hell yeah! Big noses are the most artistic noses I ever seen. Let alone they literally have the longest and the richest history. So I think you should probably be proud at this point. And by this, we reach the end of this episode. I spoke a lot. Whew. I really hope you learned a thing or two from this. And before I forget, find in the description of this episode some explanation of hard words that I used, and feel free to leave a comment here or on my Instagram account, linked in the description again. I wish for you an amazing life. Be brave, be strong, spread love, and always remember, your words carry power, so use them wisely.